Welcome to the D&D Fitness Radio podcast, brought to you by your hosts, Don Saladino from New York City and Derek Hansen from Vancouver, Canada. You know, I'm watching all this coverage of the Ukraine, and I was talking to somebody else about it. Like, I don't think I'll be doing any courses in Eastern Europe anytime soon, but this whole idea, like, I've been doing more of my own drills and sprinting, and at my age, I'm feeling like I'm more capable. And then I started watching this footage, and I'm thinking, well, one thing we could talk about is, yeah, I'm getting fitter. Would I be able to grab a gun and defend my country like some of these guys are doing? They said, what, everybody between the age of like 18 and 60. Yeah. So we fall in that range, right? And so am I fit enough to do that? And so I just started thinking about it, like, that's a different type of fitness. And obviously being able to run is not a bad quality to have. But I mean, have you ever thought about that sort of thing? Like, you know,
listen, I mean, I've never been to war, right?
And this would be the equivalent of America invading Canada, honestly. Like,
right? No. And I understand it. I've never been to war, right? I think everything changes when someone's pointing a gun at you, right? But I have been in fights, and I have been in situations where, you know, when you're a lot younger, you look back on it now and you're saying, wow, that could have went really bad. Like, it's six guys jumping you, or, you know, a knife gets pulled out, or someone shows a gun, and you're like, and I think when you get into that situation and you're exposed to that a bit, I think that sore hamstring, suddenly you're not thinking about it. I think, like, your nervous system changes a bit to where now you can do some things or run for a period of time that, you know, you're not doing if you're on the treadmill, right? Like, it's like when you hear, you know, maybe if you've ever been chased as a kid by a group of teenagers, and you're just so scared, and you just go, and the next thing you know, you're running for 30 minutes, right? But you're running at a speed where you probably never ever ran at, right? So I don't know and I don't know the answer to this. Like, can you prepare for war? Can you prepare for that fight? I'm sure, of course you can, right? But I also believe that, like, just because someone's not able to run a 10-minute mile, you know, if you throw them into the situation where they have to run, I think they're going to find the ability to do so. And that's just my opinion. What do you think?
Yeah, but I'd still like to think that all of the stuff you're doing for training, all the stuff I'm doing for training, even though it may not be specific to, you know, some sort of wartime condition, it's still going to condition you mentally, physically, you know, in terms of your nervous system, in terms of your recovery, in terms of your overall resiliency, to handle that.
That's what was most interesting, because I've worked with a lot of SEALs, right? And I'm friendly with a handful of them, and I have so much respect for these people. But what interests me about them was, it wasn't the type of workout that they were doing, right? Like, all the SEALs I've worked with, they never came to me with a style of training where you're like saying to yourself, oh my God, this is like next level, or this is cutting edge. I think it was really more about this mental conditioning, right? And obviously physically they have to be at a certain point. I'll never deny that. But from every SEAL that I've worked with, I was never blown away by that physical capacity. I was blown away by their mental and their ability to go. Like, perfect example, I was talking to a friend of mine who's a SEAL, and he came to me before COVID at Drive, and he said, you know, I've been doing so much endurance work and ultras and all this stuff, and I really got to work on some power and some strength. So I said, interesting. I said, but you got to understand that, you know, we're not trying to train you for the Olympics, but I think if you're out running 20, 30 miles a day, it's really going to eat into that. Like, you got to understand that one's not helping the other out. And he's like, no, I get it. I will pull back, like, completely. I will not do any distance running for a couple months. And I was like, wow, that's impressive. And he didn't do it. So he turns around and he gets in the program. He enjoyed some Olympic lifting. We got him back into some Olympic lifting, started with some speed and power, got into some strength. Didn't even really worry much about energy system work and in the sense of like work capacity, or it was just kind of like, let him be. It was like, all right, let's take a couple months off. Like you've never really had this in your life. And he comes in and drive on I'll never forget it. It was a Tuesday morning with his brother-in-law. And I go, how did it go? I haven't seen him in months. He's like, him and I followed up a couple of times. And he's like, it went great. I got strong. I got fast. My body feels great. I felt more powerful. It was fantastic. He's like, but I got to give you the heads up. Like I'm just coming, Sunday I ran an ultra. And I went, what are you talking about? Like, it's like, I just told you for 2 months. Like, I thought you said you didn't do much cardio work. Like the cardio work you did was minimal. Like we focus more on like sprint work or short bursts. He's like, I did exactly what you said. I was like, but you ran an ultra Sunday. He goes, yeah, my friend asked me, it was for some charity. He asked me like Thursday. And I was like, well, so you didn't train for it? He goes, no. And I go, so you haven't run distance in a couple of months and you turn around and you just decide to run an ultra at the end of our phase, and how's your body feel? He's like, fine. He just said, fine. I'm like, are you sore? He's like, no. So the guy went and ran 100 miles through the desert on a Sunday when he had 3 days notice, and he was able to show up on Tuesday as if it was a 3-mile run. And I think that's what does training give him that. I think it adds to it. I also think it takes a special type of individual to have that type of gear to be able to, do what he did. Any human being who's not running for months, and that's not conditioned for that. And to be honest with you, I said he did ultras. He didn't do a lot of them. You turn around, you go run 100 miles. Like there's a cost of doing business. Would you agree? Like something might happen.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I would assume that he had built up a degree of fitness over the years or however long. And then even that 3 months was not significant to detrain those qualities, but also he was doing other things, that probably enhanced other areas that could contribute to his running economy and all that. So,
well, let me ask you a question. If someone turned to you right now and was like, listen, there's a charity this Saturday, and if you run in it, it's going to raise $5 million for this charity for like
how far?
A marathon.
Oh, fuck.
No, honestly, think about what I'm asking you right now. A marathon. 100% I know you can do it. 100%.
Yeah, the question would be, how would I approach it?
Slow. Oh my
Yeah.
God. No, but I know you could do it. I know I could do it. I've never run a marathon. I mean, listen, it's going to suck. Yeah. I mean, once you start crossing that 17, 18 mile and you're not conditioned, like it's going to suck. But I don't know. This is not like, oh, you didn't even train. You don't train for 6 months for this. Like you've been training for 40 years for this. You've been training, like you built up this level of conditioning, this level of work ethic, this capacity. And even though it's not like hasn't been specific to marathon training, like I'm not convinced that like you can't do it. Like I'm like, no way you can do it. I think that I think that there becomes this gear with some individuals out there where they can go push. Now, when you take, and you're saying kids between the age of 17 to adults as old as 60, that's scary, right? I mean, that's a different environment than going and running a marathon. Like preparing for that or being thrown into a marathon and being thrown in a war, they're two completely different things. I mean, most people out there can't really talk about what it's like to prepare for a war, what it's like to be shot at. I sure as hell can. All I can speak from is the experience of training people who might have been there and just hearing stories that they say, but that's scary stuff.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully that never happens to us, but it certainly makes me think about all levels of preparedness around anything happening, right? And and even just the simple thing where you see there's people that are fleeing for the border and they got a suitcase, and I'm wondering, what would I put in that suitcase if I had to like leave my home? Right. Those types of things that, one, I don't want to ever think about that, but two, if I had to, what would I do? So these aren't people from a third world nation. It was like an urbanized environment, and they were very progressive, I guess, there. And and I think some people were saying that their internet connections and access to digital technology was probably better than a lot of places in North America. So, you go from that and like, we got to leave, grab what you can in one bag or one suitcase. I mean, what would you take? I mean, obviously you're taking some clothes and stuff, but
Yeah, I mean, it's a terrible thing to think about, and I don't even want to discuss it as, and people think that we're not joking around about this. I mean,
no, no.
what would you take if you're in I mean, probably you would take some type of nutrition that can hold you over if you're, maybe some nuts, maybe some dried fruit, maybe you're, um, like, are you packing water or are you just trying to find that on the go? Maybe you leave a bottle in there. God forbid there's a situation where you don't have access to some water. You bring some warm clothes, maybe like a sweatshirt, maybe some, you know, underwear, socks. I don't know, like necessities. I think you put in there necessities for survival. Um, I mean, I don't know. I mean, you're asking me this on the spot. I don't know. Maybe I'm answering this completely incorrectly. Maybe I don't know. What are you taking?
I mean, we have like, I mean, do you guys have like an emergency preparedness kit? Like we have an earthquake kit because I'm on the West Coast, and
No, we
they're
don't.
always saying, you know, this could happen. We're close to a fault line, right? So we have some things. I think one day we went to Walmart and we just went nuts and spent like $800 on things. And everything from water purifying tablets to different, containers that could filter water, dry goods, canned goods, medical supplies, like different, everything that you'd have in your medicine cabinet. We have a version of that. So I think that's probably the first thing we would do is
Yeah.
go to that stash and go,
Now hearing that, I would totally adjust my list, and I would definitely go there. I mean, it's scary stuff. I mean, fortunately, most people out there don't have to think about this, right? But right now, there's a sector of our world that is unfortunately having to deal with this.
yeah. And I hate to say it, but I don't think I would take any fitness equipment. But I would definitely take like all my sort of, Under Armour dry fit type stuff, which is lighter and packs a lot better, but can still offer some sort of, warmth and comfort and protection and whatever. But I'm certainly taking my running shoes. I'm not taking my
Oh yeah,
lifting
you're taking
shoes.
your one. Maybe it's like, you're taking like an off-road shoe, right? Like something that's water.
Yeah, yeah. If I had like a trail running shoe or something like that, that's a little tougher, which I don't. So maybe I'll have to get a pair.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I
I don't know. I'm just going down this rabbit hole of like, are we prepared for these type of extreme life, um, events? And I don't know. I mean,
Well, I mean, the pandemic, which is something completely different. I mean, the pandemic's not
yeah,
war. I mean, this is completely different, and we weren't prepared for that. Like, I don't think we were. Like, I mean, the government wasn't. Like, we didn't. No one knew. They didn't know. No one knew what decisions to make. And it's interesting because me owning a gym, and I hear a lot of gym owners are like, "Oh, this is bullshit." Like, they forced us to close. And I'm thinking about it, I'm like, yeah, it sucked. Like I lost, obviously a boatload of money on that. And but like with that situation, they don't have they didn't have the resources. They didn't have the manpower to sit there and really, I think about it. They're suddenly like, oh well, Equinox is a gym that capacitates this many people, and that's probably going to be a problem, right? Like that, and a fitness club that's going to host hundreds and hundreds of people at once is going to be a problem. But Drive 495, they only have about 100 people a day in there. No one's ever really on top of each other. So is that really going to be a problem when they were reopening? Like the answer is no. But they're not going to sit there and dissect that. They have to take their manpower and put it into other things. So they just took me and they threw me into that category. So was I upset? Sure, I was upset, but I understood why that decision was made. And I just don't think who is equipped? Were we, equipped for a pandemic? Absolutely. Are we equipped for a war? Like maybe the military is, but I know we sure as hell aren't. We try to be. Like it's,
yeah, and
it's scary.
we haven't had to. I mean, in the '80s, certainly these things were issues. Maybe, but even when there was like the Gulf War in '91,
Yeah.
it's too far away. Like it doesn't really involve us. And then maybe obviously 2001, 9/11, right? That was a little more immediate. And
That
so it
was,
had us thinking about that stuff. But it's been over 20 years now. And now it's like, oh, does this affect us? How does this affect us? Obviously, the gas prices are going up. You know, I'm going to walk to the grocery store or whatever. But
yeah.
um, yeah, it just kind of hit me the other day as, you know, I'm thinking, okay, what am I going to do for a workout? I'm like,
Well, I mean, I was in New York during 9/11, right? And I was living in Manhattan. I was living on West 57th Street between 8th and 9th. I was living on the 47th floor. I was probably 23 years old at the time, right? And seeing something, a war brought on our country, a war brought on our city, the towers. I mean, I can't tell you how many people I knew. One of my clients was the CEO of a company in the trade center. There's a story on him. His name is Jimmy Dunn. His entire firm got wiped out. He was out qualifying for the U.S. for the amateur or the mid amateur, and he just happened to go to a qualifier that day, per the advice of his best friend, who was his business partner, and his entire firm's wiped out. So if he goes to another qualifier that's not there, he's gone because he's in the office that morning, right? Like, are we really equipped to handle this stuff? The answer is no. Like, it's, I think the city rose, the country rose. Like, you saw so many people step up and make the best of an absolutely horrific situation. And I just don't think you could try and prepare for these things. I don't know. I mean, it's like, how do you prepare for that? How do you prepare for, how do you prepare for war? I just don't know. I mean, a soldier can, but like an everyday, a regular everyday Joe who's part of the working population, can they really prepare for that? I mean, you could try, like you said, with those kits and stuff like that's going to help a little bit, but are you truly mentally prepared to be thrown in that environment? That's what was interesting about the SEALs and their training, is that they're trying to create, like in SEAL training, you hear stories about them trying to create these really, really, really terrible environments for these people to train in. And those strength coaches are turning around. They're like, well, that's stupid. Like, why are they training them that way? I'm like, because they're just trying to throw the kitchen sink at these people to just see if they can handle it. And it does. It takes a special breed. These SEALs they're a special breed of people, and the amount of mental toughness that they come to the table with, and humility. Like, every one of them. I'm on Jay Redmond's mastermind the other day. He brought me on to speak to an amazing group of people. But what amazing, humble human beings. Like, these are not, people that are starting bar fights. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're walking in and they're listening and they're kind of absorbing. And then when it's game time for them, they put their foot on the gas. Another wild story, and obviously not mentioning names or what team this is with, but I was working with someone in the military. And at the end of a session one day, we were becoming friendly, and I asked him a question, and I said, well, I got a question for you. You don't mind me asking? It's about training. I said, sure, throw it at me. I said, I heard stories, and these are obviously rumors, that you hear all these crazy stories. They drown you during training, and hearing all this stuff. And he was turned around, and he's like, nah, they don't do that purposely. He's like, but, and he said, but he says, when it happened to me, it was interesting that I was underwater for so long that I forgot I was underwater, and I just went out. And the next thing you know, they're pulling me out of the water, and they're, resuscitating me, and they're bringing me back to life. And I'm like, wait, what do you mean you've like forgot you were underwater? He goes, you're just so into the task at hand that I was just under too long, and I just blacked out. And the next thing you know, people are diving and pulling me out. He's like, literally, like, not like, oh yeah, like look what I did, but he's like having that conversation. You're just kind of looking at this person like, do you realize what you're saying right now? Like, this is, and that's why I almost think it's a bit embarrassing when, like, you hear people writing these books, like, that gentleman who hired a SEAL for the month, and he's like, oh, SEAL training for a month in your Park Avenue apartment. Like, yeah, sure. Like, right? It's like, I can't even, like, I'm not saying I'm right about everything I say, and I'm sure someone might listen to this and be like, well, that was a good book and that was motivating, and sure, great, awesome. But like, you can't replicate what these people in the military are going through because you hire someone who is a SEAL to beat the crap out of you for a month. Like, sorry, like, doesn't work that way. And, if you made a lot of money on that, fantastic. And I hope you got a great experience out of that. But to me, it's not the same thing.
Yeah, there's that image, and I'm sure you've seen it, whether it's an image or the film of they have Navy SEALs testing or training, and they have their hands bound behind their back and they're submerged in a pool. Have you seen that? Where it's like they're basically hands tied. I think I don't know if their feet are bound too, but they're kind of just in the pool suspended. And I'm like, I mean, just looking at that picture creates anxiety for me, like to be put in that situation. So I assume, like you said, it's all about creating tremendous amounts of stress to make them more resilient. I mean, I assume they know that they're not going to perish in that scenario, but it's still
My God, scary,
frightening.
scary.
Yeah.
You remember Jay Redmond?
Yep.
Remember Jason Redmond? Did I read you his? Did I read you what he put on his hospital door after he was literally pretty much blown up? I mean, Jay's a good friend. I mean, he had his face blown off, his arm almost had to get amputated. Um, I think he said George Bush hung this in the white, not this obviously, but they had it out framed, and they had this hung up because he was in such bad shape. I'm laughing with Jay. I think it was yesterday. We're on a call. He's fantastic, and I've been fortunate enough to be able to help him with his fitness. What an incredible person, right? But he was literally, practically on his deathbed, right? And he writes this in his hospital bed, and he has it on a magnet. I've literally hung it up here on my fridge. But he says, and I apologize if and he even says it, he goes, no, I was writing this and I was not in good shape. But attention to all who enter here. If you are coming into this room with sorrow or to feel sorry for my wounds, go elsewhere. The wounds I received, I got in a job I love doing it for people I love, supporting the freedom of a country I deeply love. I'm incredibly tough and will make a full recovery. What is full? That is the absolute utmost physically, he says, it's the absolute most physically my body has the ability to recover. Then I will push that about 20% further through sheer mental tenacity. This room you are about to enter is a room of fun, optimism, and intense rapid growth. If you are not prepared for that, go elsewhere, from the management. And to me, I thought that was one of the most remarkable things that I've read.
What is that? That is a card where he wrote that on there?
He wrote it on a sheet of paper, and then he had it turned into a magnet that he now gives out to people that are entering into his kind of his mastermind course. And he coaches people on, optimizing, challenges in life, right? And how to go take things to that next level, whether it's his business or mindset. Or he brought me in to talk about more like mind body yesterday, and it was fantastic. But when you hear someone write something like that, and the condition they were in, I think it takes a special person to do that. And I don't know if that's a person you can make. I think that's someone that I think you're born, into that. And I think you can be groomed, right, to go in a specific direction. But that to me, that's I feel like almost impossible to teach. Let's just say.
Well, yeah, I see some of that in some of the interviews you see with people in the Ukraine who are talking about, like, obviously we need some help and all that, but we're going to stay here and we're going to defend our land, and I'm not afraid. Or it's the same sort of sentiment.
No, it's fascinating, and it's amazing how many friends I've spoken to in the last couple of days who have family over there, and they're scared, they're frightened for their family and their country, and it's devastating. It really is. But
well, on that note, like I'm preparing a little mini course that I'll send to you. But one of the things I show is, like, the reason that I want people to run fast and sprint fast is because it's this profound effect on your body. Like, most people don't run fast after high school, right? Or try to force themselves. So I say, like, I'm turning 53. I'm still sprinting as hard as I can, albeit safely. But I like the benefit that I get generally from doing that in terms of, like, strength, mental resilience, recuperative ability. So there's a systemic response that I get. Now, as you as a trainer, when you're working with people or advising people, do you think there's a need to have that stress so profound even if they're coming to you to be like, work on their body composition, do you still think it's your responsibility to force them to a level of stress that's going to benefit them generally?
I think it depends on the individual, but I think the goal would be, right? Like, yeah, the goal would be to get every individual back there, whether they can get back there or not. There are a lot of, there are a lot of factors, right? Like I would like, I think running is, what's your favorite form of cardio? Running. Like it is, it's my favorite form of cardio. I find it most enjoyable. But I also feel like you've got to kind of earn that right to run, and at what intensity. It's easy to go out and you run these you run these longer distances, you're pulling back on the speed a little bit, and you don't have to demand so much out of your body and your nervous system, right? And things start getting like a little tricky when you start pushing the body to demand that type of force and stress. And if you haven't earned that, yeah, there's a cost of doing business. I keep saying, I steal a line from Charlie Weingroff. Like that's why I like the Airdyne bike so much, because it's an easy way to get someone in here who's, 50, 60 years old and demand some speed out of them. But if you were asking me right now, like, if you can have every person who comes through this door right now eventually sprint, would you choose that? Might be the first thing I'm choosing. Think about what I said. I'm not making them sprint. I'm not forcing them to sprint. But if I can create a response in their training where we can build and develop them back to the point where they can run like they did when they were 12, 13 years old, why wouldn't that be the goal? There are so many incredible benefits there's so many great things I'm seeing when I can turn around and see someone who's 50 or 60 years old outside on the street or on the turf sprinting. That tells me a lot about their body. Right, Derek? Like, if you could demand that type of force, or that type of stop and go, that's special stuff.
And it seems to me like, if I just watch social media, which is not necessarily a great representation of anything, but it seems to me like the deadlift is one of those things where people are like, and you'll see somebody, an 80-year-old woman deadlift, 200 pounds, right? So that seems to be, at least generally, a litmus test for, I don't know, strength, fitness, whatever. But yeah, very rarely do I see any of these people moving fast, which is probably a higher level activity, I would assume.
I think it's undervalued. Do you actually? I would assume you think it's undervalued. And of course you do, right? It's part of your business, right?
Yeah, I mean, if we were out in the forest, fending for ourselves, would you rather have a 400-pound deadlift under your belt, or would you rather have a 40, right? Like,
100%.
I mean, unless a tree falls on somebody, but I always think about that stuff. Not that it's,
where's the body more resilient, right? So let's take it out of the forest, and let's take it out of, a war type scenario. If you take, I'm just going to pick an individual. I'm going to pick, all right. If you take a 50-year-old individual, male or female, and you had the choice that they had a beastly deadlift, or they can turn around and basically run as hard as they want, I think running as hard as they can, as hard as they want, meaning like they can demand a lot out of their body in a sprint. I think that is showing more overall benefit in all the positivity that's going on in their body from a movement standpoint, right?
Yeah, like here's an example, and this is not a great reflection of Vancouver, but every city seems to have more random assaults. Like, so Vancouver, there was something on the news that said there's an average of 4 random assaults on people in the downtown area every day. And I'm like, okay, that's, that are reported, right? So what would serve you better, being able to run away from somebody or deadlift them? I mean, it seems obvious to me in terms of, my personal safety, but that's a practical situation. Or like I've told you before, when I worked at a physical therapy clinic, we'd have so many people come in with torn Achilles, a avulsed patellar tendon, those types of injuries. And I said, well, how did it happen? Well, I was running after the bus, or I was running after my kid, or, so that seems to be a problem that isn't addressed, although a lot of these people still might weightlift. So I don't know. It gets me thinking about how I present some of the stuff that I'm teaching around the general population and general fitness.
I think what's so palatable about what you're delivering is you're not requiring someone in their training early on, like as they're getting started, to do this high amount of volume, right? Like you're just getting them to kind of move, with your A skips or your high knees, and then you're getting them warming up, and then you're transitioning them maybe into some, falling starts for 10 meters, right? Like what's 10 meters? Like most people aren't. I was talking to Brett Bartholomew the other day. We were on a call together, and we were laughing because he put up a video about how when someone will look at a program and it'll be like, "Oh, is this all you want me to do?" Right? Like, is this it? And it actually, as a coach, we're not supposed to get annoyed over this stuff, but it's also a coaching moment for us to be able to turn around and say, you know, the success of your program does not come down to how much volume we put on it or whether it looks like a Chinese menu or not. And I think some of the best training templates I've ever seen, no matter what we're training for, whether it's sprinting, whether it's power, it is taking a little bit more of this minimalistic approach. On bodybuilding becomes a little bit trickier, right? Because you're trying to, in a nutshell, you're trying to create so much tension and trauma in the muscle, and you're trying to do that without joint damage, and you want the body to recover and be able to heal and repair through protein and rest, and then come back and repeat and repeat and repeat. And then you're building this like this dense full muscle. But when it comes down to performance, like you're talking about, most people look at that and be like, what? 3 sets of 10 meters resting? I don't need 3 minutes rest. I don't need 2 minutes rest. Like, why do I need that much rest? Like, I'm not tired. Like, we're not training you to get tired. We're training to teach you how to demand more about maybe on you, maybe it's your posterior chain because you've been sitting so much. And if you get up and start doing it too fast and too quick, you end up pulling something or rupturing something. And maybe that's a problem. So there is a progression that's very thoughtful. Like I know, Derek, you have put people through, and that's my favorite running program on the planet. Anyone's listening to this, if like you want to start running for to develop some elasticity and to develop, guess what? Like, yeah, like flexibility. Like I've increased my flexibility from being able to train this way. But that elastic response has been incredible. But yeah, you're going to have to do some things that may not have that entertainment effect that you're looking for. And I find that interesting also because it's not always what looks on paper is the sexiest. Most people are turning away from.
Yeah, I remember reviewing some college strength coaches' workout plans, and they end up putting them on cards, right? And they had to use such a small font to fit everything on the daily workout card, that it was impossible to see. Like I think I needed like level 4 reading glasses to see it. But yeah, there is a tendency for people to think more is more.
I really don't mind people like coaches doing that with like their warm up. I mean, I'm going to get my head cut off for even
Yeah,
saying that.
yeah, yeah.
Whether it's prehab or whether it's movement prep or whether it's a more warm up, like who gives a shit? It's like a call what you want. But like, if you want to turn around and throw a lot of filler at someone with a warm up to allow them to feel like that they're getting more work in, like it's just movement. It's body weight movement. It's not gonna hurt you. It might tire you out a little bit depending on the conditioning that you're in. But let me tell you something. If I look at a program and it says like squat, row, press, like, and that's it, I'm not looking at that as this is easy. I almost look at these things and I'm like, oh my God, like there's 3 exercises. I immediately know that according to my goal, what I have to do with those exercises or what, unless we're working percentages and it's automatically factoring in your effort, which is just kind of going and work that. But in week 16, it's going to look a hell of a lot different than week 1. Like you're not going to be sitting there like this going through the workout. So, it is interesting, but I think at the end of the day, to like, we keep bringing this up, I keep talking about this, is the overall goal to get someone sprinting. Like if you were to simplify everything and you were like, listen, I'm taking this person from sitting 8 hours a day and they can't touch their toes and they couldn't even jog for a mile. And then a year later, we have them doing 20-meter bursts, 10-meter bursts, all out. And we can hit repeat. Like, is that one of the goals for you? You got to say yes, right? What is that telling you about the improvement that they've had over that period of time? Do you agree?
Yeah, I would think so. And there's more coaches at private facilities, like as you know, I'm going to present at Luca's facility in Seattle Renton area. And, I watch the stuff that he puts on and what he's doing with general population people, and he's doing the drills and accelerations and things. And so it's nice to see that it's not just all lifting and, or yoga, or even Pilates or stuff like that. It's actually getting people to move fast and fiercely. So I think it's evolving into more of that type of stuff.
It's so important. I mean, I know before my training sessions, like as I get into my training sessions, I think it's pretty simple. I foam roll. I spend some time working on my dynamic warm up, my prehab, my movement prep, whatever it is. And daily that changes, but I'll put 10, 15 minutes into that at least. Like I need to spend time doing that. I'm normally taking 3 to 5 movements and doing like 3 rounds of it and repeating it and repeating it again and for a third time. And then after that, like one of the things that you got me into was, I think, getting on, the motorless treadmill and just doing some tempos, 4 to 6 tempos, 15-second clips in between sets. Maybe Coach Adam's hopping on, I'm coming over, taking a sip of water, adjusting the music. There's no real time on it, right? There's just, I'm allowing my body to kind of come back, and then I'm repeating it. And this has been one of the best ways to allow my body to warm up and really allow my body to recreate a little bit of a loss of that athleticism that starts declining in time as we do what you and I are doing now, and that's sitting, right? Like in high school, when you got out of the chair at 3 o'clock to go, to go play your sports, you weren't standing up out of the chair. You weren't like, you weren't like that first step. It's like, no, you were just like, that bell would go off and you were just suddenly like,
yeah,
like out of the classroom, like you had the ability to react that way, where in time, as we continue to do this, we lose that. That's the first thing that I've seen in my fitness, my overall fitness, to diminish. Because my body composition, hey man, it's better now than it was when I was 21. I was on a cover back in October for Muscle and Fitness. Like my strength, better than it was when I was 21. And I was training like a lunatic. What is that first thing that you feel go? I think it's that level of I think it's that elasticity.
Which is a reflex quality. I mean, there is a tissue component to it, but certainly it's a neurological reflex quality, the stretch reflex, right? And I think if you don't, force yourself to train that, it goes so quickly. And that's why you see these problems with, people getting tendonitis and tendon ruptures and all that. So, I mean, even there's somebody who messaged me on Instagram, and he runs I think more of a martial arts facility, and they're doing sprinting. They have a small facility, so they do the drills where they tether themselves to the power rack or something, and they just do running high knee drills and I said, try to do like 25 to 30 steps per set, and, take a minute and do it again. And so they're doing it, and you can see it transfers to their, things like kicking or punching. And seeing that is pretty encouraging, because they are getting that reflex quality, which you generate from the ground. And then whether you're throwing a punch or whatever, it does transfer very readily. So I think there's a lot of ways to do it. And I found that getting back to doing my stuff with the drills, on a hard surface, when I jump on that true form curved treadmill, I can generate higher velocities, because now I'm putting more force into the ground in a shorter amount of time, and that belt just starts flying, and it feels like I'm bouncing on it. And I thought,
you tell me that it's that I feel like when you're running well, you're just feeling this trampoline like effect.
Yeah,
the
like
body's
pistoning
like,
off.
kind of like hopping, right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah. Pogo,
Yeah.
pogo stick kind of thing. It's not about plodding and pulling, and it's about snap, 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 right? And that's something I felt that I'd lost, like, because I'm older, but it's just I wasn't training it consistently enough. And I think
talk about the nervous system a little bit. Like how does that, can you simplify it and explain, like, because when people add more training and they're like, oh, I'm just stretching all the time, I'm lifting all the time, and this and that, and they feel this amount of strain and stress on the body. And I've actually seen, individuals' levels of elasticity or flexibility diminish because they're not taking that proper amount of rest. Can you talk about that a little bit, or if you start
Yeah,
throwing
I think, I mean, in my experience, it seems that there are different categories of nervous system stress and different layers, right? So if you go, like, here's an example. We used to sprint with my sprinter athletes, like 100-meter, 200-meter athletes, and they would go and sprint for, it would be a 2-hour session. Now that's not sprinting 2 hours straight. That's like 30, 45-minute warm up, do a couple of sprint drills, take a break, do a sprint, take 5-minute break, do a longer sprint, take a 10-minute break. But I mean, those runs were intense and it would take 2 hours. And for the average person, it would be absolutely exhausting. But then they would go into the weight, or then we'd go do some plyometric jumps for 20 minutes or 30 minutes. And then they would go lift weights after. So this could be a 3-hour workout, but they would still go in and they would do power cleans or bench press or squat, and they would still hit personal bests. So would you not think that sprinting would exhaust you or jumping would exhaust you? But I think they're in different baskets within that nervous system based on velocity of movement or reflex involvement, right? So heavy reflex involvement on the jumps and the sprints, which is a different quality than longer tension, longer recruitment. So I think you can manipulate that to your advantage. And obviously, if you sprint, it's such a high intensity activity that it makes you more resilient, and it creates capacity to go and lift after. And if you're doing all these things, it just creates a synergy. Whereas if you just go and lift all the time, you're going to exhaust that basket, and you're not recharging these other areas that will feed back into it. So it's almost like having these multiple batteries that you have to keep charging to keep the whole system going. And
That's a
that's
really
how I
cool.
look at it. It's like there's a diversification of your central nervous system portfolio that has to happen. It can't just be, I just squat, right? Or I just bench, or, you got to diversify it. Otherwise you plateau. Does that make sense?
100%. And I think this is where training needs to be going, right? Where most people out there are looking at it like, well, why are you doing your cardio before? And I'm like, I'm not doing my cardio before. This isn't me going and doing a 15-minute tempo, a 15-second tempo run. I'm not considering that cardiovascular training. I'm not training that for my cardiovascular. I might get a cardiovascular response from it, but I'm training this more as part of my movement prep. Like that is part of my warm up. That's allowing my body to create that elasticity, right? To recreate, what I might be losing by sitting. And it brings me in from a performance standpoint. I could just do so much more now. Like, as you said, I'm stronger and I'm able to do more in the weight room since I've been adding that in early on.
Yeah. And if you, like, Charlie Francis taught this to me, he said, if you do that type of activity, the tempo, it creates a better circulatory system, which creates more heat within the system, which allows nerves to conduct easier. So if you have heat within your body, the electrical signals transmit a lot more efficiently and quickly, right? So you're like, oh, okay, so that's why I feel better, right?
Right.
So people don't think of all these things. And then also, if that circulation is going really well because you did that tempo workout, now you flush out waste products and you re-energize the muscles more efficiently, right? So all these things are interrelated, and I just don't think people think about it that way. They think, oh, I got to be ultra specific. This is my goal. I'm just going to keep doing that. It's like, no, you got to kind of spread things out a bit.
No, I totally agree with that. And I'm urging everyone, if they're interested in seeing what Derek's created and what I've actually been, Derek, I've really have been implementing this in, I probably think 2 to 3 days a week right now. And this is winter time and I'm not at a track. I'm not outside. So
I've got something else you can do. You have to get the Perform Better guys to send you some 24-inch plastic hurdles, PVC hurdles. And
okay.
then what we've been doing is we've been doing, like, get at least 8 of them, 8 to 10 of them, whatever. And then we've been doing these hurdle walkovers. I'll send you the sequence.
Okay.
And so the first time you do it, if you haven't done hurdle walkovers, your adductors are screaming, your hips are screaming, like, what the hell are you doing to me? Right. And also when we're doing them, it was amazing how my heart rate went up, like went up over like 135, and we're just doing like skipping over hurdles. And so the first couple of sessions, everybody hated me because I prescribed them, and even some of the taller guys, right? And then now we're into 6 to 8 weeks of doing this. Everybody feels more mobile, and they're
Right.
like, wow, I feel like I can, and one of the guys was the guy we interviewed, Paul Cheng, and he does stunt work and does
Yeah.
martial arts stuff. And so he's like, yeah, my hips are better. And
Yeah.
so the hurdle
8 of them.
walkovers
Eight
are,
of them.
yeah, see if you can get 8 of them, and then I would love to see you guys, take your group through them there, because you have enough space to do it. And it's everything from forward walkovers, backward walkovers, side
Yeah.
step overs. And if you do like 3 sets each for your warm up, they'll lift better, they'll run better.
I'll get on it.
Yeah. So I'll send you some video to emulate. And but
we should do a Zoom where I'll watch a video, but maybe even like a coaching Zoom that we could put up for everyone to see. That could be fun.
yeah, and it seems like, I mean, you could create a whole group fitness class around this concept of range of motion, elasticity, but I just thought it was, that's something I did when I was younger, and I just brought it back. I'm like, wow, like, and I went into it thinking, oh my God, this is horrible. I don't have any hip flexibility. Why am I doing this? I'm gonna dislocate my hips. And then now I have this new ability to, whatever, I had to help a friend move a double door, a French door. And I had to step up this retaining wall. And I'm like, there's no way I can do this, right? Stepped up, lifted it, And the thing that was most sore the next day was my biceps. So
crazy. So crazy. Isn't it? The whole human body's so funny.